everybody, this is Harry coming to you before it gets dark. It's getting dark. It's almost 8 o'clock here. And I thought I'd do this. I was going to do this in the house, but it's just, I have no lighting, and hopefully I can get this done. So, King James and Lady Ian, Sir Ian of Wales. Anyways, they're good guys. I don't care when anybody says they are both good guys. They come up with some good things on their own at times, and they come up with they're doing the list thing again, and so they're listing their favorite silent movies, and it doesn't matter how many you pick and all that. Silent films are one of my favorite eras of films. I love the history of it. I like the beginnings of film. Watching it, I like the just how some of them are made and how they learned their techniques over the years. So if you watch a film from 1901, which films were no more than maybe a few minutes long, up to 15 minutes long, because they were made for Nickelodeons and stuff like that. How they progressed, and then by 1915, when D.W. Griffith came out with Birth of a Nation, I want to talk about that movie right now. No matter how the film had changed, how filmmaking was done. So I like how to see that creative process up to when they tried color in films. In this time, how they try to add sound. I actually got a DVD in there where they had recordings on a record from 1914, 1915 with a big old tractor trailer. Anyways, they had Undercrank Productions. Anyways, they recorded it, and then you play the record back with them synced, and so these are from the Library of Congress, so they actually have the sound that they recorded synced up to the film. So it's pretty interesting, early sound film, and all that. So I enjoy that period. A lot of great actors from that time. A lot of not good, so much good actors. A lot of people think when they think of silent movies, they think of Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd. They always think of the comedians, maybe Douglas Fairbanks for drama, action films. Douglas Fairbanks was one of the first action stars there was out there. So, so when I think of silent films, I think of those guys as well. But I also, like I said, I think of Douglas Fairbanks. I also think of Lon Chaney, Gloria Swanson, Marion Davies, John Barrymore, John Gilbert, those actors and actresses, Gloria Swanson, I don't know if I said it already. Anyways, I think of those people because they were important mosquito for that time. So don't be a snob. Watch a silent movie. Take your time out. I mean, most people have the basics. Maybe Nostradamus. They'll have maybe Metropolis, because they're big name films. But there's other films like Battleship Potemkin, which I didn't put on this list. I try to keep it to about 15 or so, because I can't be lengthy about these things. So I'm going to give you the 15 films that I think that you should watch to introduce you to silent films. Now, Jay and James had come up with some good films. They mentioned a lot of Chaplin. They also mentioned some German expressionism films, so I didn't go back and copy what they said films. So, but these are the films I like, and I think that if you watched them, gave them a chance, that you would might like them too, as an introduction to silent film. First on my list is a film called Our Hospitality with Buster Keaton from 1923. It was made prior to The General. It is the story is set in the 1840s, 1820s, 1840s, something like that. and he has to go back to. He goes back. He grows up in New York. He grows up, but he wants to go back to the South, to the country, and go to the homestead because he thought he inherited this house, and he gets there, and there's another family there that he falls in love with this girl, but this other family there wants to kill him. So they vowed vengeance on killing anybody from his family, and they show up. So that's the whole gist of that. A lot of great costumes, period piece. The train scene is great. His wife Norma Talmadge is in it. His son Joe Jr. Is in it. His father Joseph Keaton is in it. Joe Jr. is Buster. If you don't know, Buster Keaton's real name is Joseph Keaton. So check that out. Our Hospitality. I first saw that on PBS, American Masters, I think it was. They showed it one night at 10 o'clock at night, and I taped it and watched it and fell in love with it. Great cinematography. Number 14, The Thief of Baghdad, 1924. If you familiar with Aladdin, modern day Aladdin, then you know The Thief of Baghdad. Great action film. Stars Douglas Fairbanks, Snitz Edwards, and Anna May Wong. You need to check that out. 1924, The Thief of Baghdad. I have that on Blu-ray by Cohen Corporation, I think it's called. That's where I have the Jamaica Inn by Alfred Hitchcock. But yeah, great action film. The big thing with him is leaping, flying, and then coming down a curtain. And like I said, Douglas Fairbanks did most of all his own stunts, and he was the big action star in the 20s. He was very popular. He was close friends with Buster Keaton. Charlie Chaplin, and they actually went into corporation together with make United Artists. So Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford and I want to say D.W. Griffith all went in and created United Artists. Number 13, A Trip to the Moon from 1902, the earliest silent film on here. If you haven't seen this one, it's on YouTube. It's probably on Amazon Prime. It is one of the first science fiction films ever made by George Méliès, French director. And you've probably seen it with the big moon with the rocket going in the eye. That's what it's most famous for. The film is only about 15 minutes long. There's a version where it's narrated as well with some funky music. I have it on Flickr Alley, released it on Blu-ray. So yes, I paid $30 for a 15-minute movie. Well worth it. Well worth it though. Restored. Trip to the Moon, 1902. Number 12, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans from 1927. I believe Ian has this in his collection. It's directed by F.W. Murnau. It's his first American film after leaving Germany. Stars George O'Brien, Janet Gaynor, Margaret Livingston. Considered one of the greatest films ever made. You can hear my fucking neighbors. It's not the roosters, it's the music. So, that might be, that's not my neighbors, no. Maybe it's motorcyclist radio. With a kid barely hanging on the back. So Sunrise of Two Humans, it wasn't considered a financial success at the time of its release, but it is considered a classic film. So if you have not seen it, check it out. Eureka, I think it is Masters of Cinema, one of those two, has a release of it in the UK. There's two versions of it in the US. By Fox Studios, it was released, the UK version and the Fox version that was released. So you might want to check that out. Number 11, Wings from 1927, the first film to win the Best Picture at the Academy Awards, starring Clara Bow, Charles Buddy Rogers, Richard Arlen, Gary Cooper, directed by William A. Wellman. Fantastic flying scenes in this film. This is the film that inspired Howard Hughes to make Hell's Angels, that notorious film. If you've ever seen The Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he plays Howard Hughes at the beginning of the film, he makes that movie Hell's Angels. The flying sequences and Wings is the one that inspired him to make this movie. It was also it was discovered only in 1992. They thought it was a lost film. It was discovered in 1992, and it was restored and put on safety film, and it's been shown, and it's on Blu-ray. So you need to check it out. Wings, first film ever released. The first film that ever won an Academy Award for Best Picture. Number 10, The Black Pirate, 1926, starring Douglas Fairbanks, Billy Dove, Anders Randolph, Donald Crisp, who I love Donald Crisp. He's in a lot of films from the 30s and 40s, and even up to the 50s. He had a long career. He also directed a lot of films. This one was directed by Albert Parker. It was one of the first films made in color. It is in 2-strip Technicolor, so you get to see Douglas Fairbanks as a swashbuckling pirate in 2-tone Technicolor. So check that out. It was on Kino, and I kept putting it off. Oh, it'd be there. Nothing ever lasts forever. So I had to go find it and I found it on eBay for $50. So yeah, I paid $50 for it, and I'm happy to have it. The Black Pirate. Check it out. Color film. All right. Number 9, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1923. Directed by Wallace Worsley, starring Lon Chaney, Patsy Ruth Millard, and Norman Carey. Lon Chaney and Norman Carey had played in The Phantom of the Opera together. Everybody knows The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Need to pick it up. Need to see it. Number 8, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1920. One of the first, I guess, horror films I ever seen in full that was silent. It showed on American Movie Classics, and back in the 80s, they never showed commercials. At this time, they would play old classic films, and this came on at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember coming home from work, and it was on, and I watched it and fell in love, and I found it on DVD. I've not upgraded to Blu-ray, but directed by John S. Robertson, starring John Barrymore, Brandon Hurst, Martha Mansfield, and Charles Lane. The scene where Barrymore goes from Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde is classic. It was done in camera, his transition into Mr. Hyde. It was done in camera in real time, so check it out. It's on YouTube. Yeah, I love YouTube. If you don't have the DVD, you want to check it out first. Number 7, Safety Last, 1923. Directed by Fred C. Neumeyer and Sam Taylor. Directed by Harold Lloyd. Stars Mildred Davis, Bill Struther, and Noah Young. It's on Criterion. He's a boy, leaves country town, goes to the city, makes himself bigger than what he actually is. Kind of gets in trouble when the girlfriend shows up. Funny film. A classic from Harold Lloyd. There's plenty of films by Harold Lloyd that I love. Speedy, Grandma's Boy, The Freshman. They're all funny. Grew up watching Harold Lloyd short films. There used to be a show called The World According to Harold Lloyd or something like that. It used to be on PBS, and they took all his films and kind of made different sequences of them. And there was about 30 minutes long. That's my introduction to Harold Lloyd. Number 6, The Big Parade, 1925, directed by King Vidor, starring John Gilbert, Lawrence Stallings, Harry Bain. This was the highest grossing film of all time. It's a World War I picture. In silent era, it was the highest grossing film in the silent era. I have it on a digibook from, I think it's Warner Brothers. It's a great film, and I'm not good at telling synopsis, so just look it up, IMDb, with The Big Parade. Number 5, City Lights, 1931, Charles Chaplin, directed by Charles Chaplin, starring Charlie Chaplin, Virginia Cherrill, Florence Lee, Harry Myers, and Henry Bergman. Classic, 1931 late. silent film. They were already making sound film. What's up with the motorcycles today? Anyways, they were making silent films or sound films for several years by this point, and Chaplin refused to cave in, so he made a silent movie. Fraught with the production was fraught with a lot of problems. He actually fired Virginia Cheryl and brought in Georgia Hale, I believe, again to play in this film. I think it was Georgia Hale, but anyways, firing her and bringing Virginia back. So Virginia Cheryl was actually Cary Grant's first wife. She married Cary Grant about a year or so later. Damn mosquito. So City Lights classic, that's on Criterion as well. Number 4, Three Bad Men from 1926, directed by John Ford. Stars George O'Brien, Olive Borden, Tom Sanchi, Louis Telliger. 3 outlaws come to the aid of a young girl after her father had died. I only first watched this last year. I found it on Kino Lorber and watched it on Blu-ray. Got it at one of the Kino Lorber sales. Great film. Kind of reminds me of the Three Godfathers with John Wayne film. Came out in the 40s. So if you're familiar with that film, this is pretty good. It's a John Ford film. Early John Ford film. Silent, like I said, from 1926. Damn mosquitoes. I'm gonna hurry up here. 1923, number 3, from 1923, Zaza, directed by Alan Dwan, starring Gloria Swanson, H.B. Warner, Ferdinand Gottschalk, based on an 1899 French play. That is available on Kino Lorber as well. A good film. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. Remember her? She was on a swing, and she falls off and hurts herself, and then the rich guy, falls in love with her. Typical story, but very good, well done, well acted. Number 2, Way Down East, 1919, 1920. I've seen 2 different dates on this, so I'll put both. Directed by D.W. Griffith, the infamous D.W. Griffith, one of the greatest early American directors. Starring Lillian Gish, Richard Balthamus, Lowell Sherman. A naive country girl is tricked into a sham marriage by a wealthy womanizer and having a child out of wedlock. The most famous scene from this movie, it is quite long film, but the most famous scene from this movie, if you watch anything about silent films or whatever, is that she's on an ice floe in a river, and she's knocked out or unconscious, passed out, whatever, and she's on this ice floe, flowing down the river and going towards the waterfall, and gets saved. And you can see him hopping on the ice floes in the river. So that's one of the most famous scenes from that film. But it's called Way Down East. Check it out. I liked it. I like them all. There's some I don't like, but I like them all. And then the last one, Ian had mentioned this one. I thought I'd throw in a German film. The Last Laugh from 1924, directed by F.W. Murnau. Starring Emil Jannings, who was the big German actor back in that day, big star. Maley Delschmidt, Max Heller. Like Ian said, the doorman, he was seen struggling at the door one day, and the guy is like, oh, he's too old for this shit, and decides to knock him down, makes him a janitor, and his he was become distinguished because he was a doorman. He had a big jacket and the buttons, and he was distinguished. He was looked up to in his neighborhood, and he became a custodian, cleaned bathrooms and clean floors and stuff like that, and kind of felt bad about it, degraded, and nobody knew it, except for the people that worked with him. But the people in his neighborhood thought he was still a doorman because he stole the jacket and kept walking home with the jacket on, so he gained that respect. Very good film. Very, very good film. I had rented it a while back, a few years ago, and watched it and loved it. And then I decided to buy it. I bought it on Blu-ray, Kino Lorber. Best place to buy silent film. So, yeah, that's my list, 15 films. Um, I know I kind of rushed it and talked real fast, but there's 20 minutes of your life that you just can't get back. But anyways, don't be a silent film snub. Jay, Bob, who probably lived through the silent era with Mike. Just kidding. The guys are not that old, but you were around when a lot of them silent stars were still alive. So, but yeah, don't be a snob. Try to educate yourself on these films. You just think, oh, it's silent, it's going to be bad. They're not all bad. You have to pay attention to what's going on, but they're enjoyable. Some of them are funny. There's no CGI in this shit. If you watch some of the stuff that Charles Chaplin or Buster Keaton did or Harold Lloyd did, they did that shit without CGI. And even the earlier stuff, man, I'm surprised nobody ever got killed in these films. Uh, I imagine some have, but I got hurt real bad. Um, but yeah, that stuff is great stuff, and all for entertainment. And they love the craft, and you can see it in every picture that was made. So, anyways, thank you for watching. It's getting darker, as you can tell, and getting grainier. It looks like a 1960s film on bad print. Take care. Black Lives Matter, and everybody matters. Love you.